I'd like to tell you some particulars about our keynote speaker, and then I'll really talk about Fred, who's a close friend of mine. Dr. Fred Luskin founded and currently serves as director of the Stanford University Forgiveness Projects. He is also senior consultant at Health Promotion Wellness at the Stanford University Health Center and department chair in clinical psychology at Sofia University. At Stanford, Dr. Luskin teaches classes on positive psychology, the art and science of meditation, forgiveness, wellness, flourishing, and the psychology of storytelling to undergraduate and graduate students. He also conducts numerous workshops and staff development trainings in relationship enhancement, stress management, and positive psychology through the Stanford Be Well program. Dr. Luskin is the author of the best-selling books Forgive for Good, A Proven Prescription for Health and Happiness, and Forgive for Love, the missing ingredient for healthy and happy relationship. Dr. Luskin has been interviewed on the topic of forgiveness in worldwide media, including the New York Times, O Magazine, The Today Show, the Los Angeles Times and Time Magazine, the Huffington Post, and CBS Morning News. He is also the author of Stress-Free for Good, 10 Scientifically Proven Life Skills for Health and Happiness, a book that emerged from his 10 years as a researcher in preventive cardiology at Stanford University. At Stanford University School of Medicine, His work demonstrated the effect of enhancing stress management and positive emotion skills to help patients cope with congestive heart failure and arrhythmia. Dr. Luskin teaches stress management, emotional intelligence, and happiness skills to corporate clients throughout the United States. His work focuses on research-proven triad of healthy and happy life, enhancing interpersonal relationships, creating a positive purpose in one's life, and guided practice and appreciation and other positive emotions. So now let me tell you about Fred. That's what he does. Let me tell you who he is. Some of you know who I'm closer with, that over the last few years I've been through some really difficult challenges in my life. And Fred and I have been friends. We are part of the same meditation society. And I have to say, if I were to pick one person in the universe who was the most supportive person in helping me through these challenging and changing times for me, personal changes, it was Fred, because he is a phenomenal empathic listener. He just knows how to be with people and listen. He has really perfected that skill. And then he has this incredible ability to move from empathic listening, just walking in one's shoes, to having the courage, but with detachment, to speak the truth. Well, here's what I'm feeling. So he doesn't come across with ego, like, listen, this is what you got to do, John. Didactically, it's just like, here's what I'm sensing. What do you think about this? So he's able to move from empathy to honest sharing in a really beautiful way. And I think you'll enjoy him immensely. Dr. Fred Luskin.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, John. I almost always accept opportunities to speak to teachers. Like, you'd have to be in some place like really cold for me to say no. Like northern Siberia or something. Or I worked in the public schools for about 10 years. I didn't like it. I needed a job. I had 2 young children. But I strained on the leash of just a system and the administrations and the rules and the profound lack of anything spiritual or understanding of really that you're molding these little human beings, and that like their life and whether they could be kind was more important than where I was working, whether they could get into Stanford. And I used to say to myself all the time, you know, Fred, you love the kids, you like most of the teachers, but anybody above that, like, you know, you could pass on. You know, it's like, no, thank you. and after a while, I just didn't want to do it anymore. It was soul kind of crushing a bit. But you know, I got into Stanford. I got a PhD. I started, you know, hanging out with more Silicon Valley types, and I got. I now teach in the corporate world, and but every time I got a chance to do talks or workshops, and I've done on social emotional learning for schools, you know, it always reminded me of, I'm going to say, the dignity of, like, people who take a significant financial sacrifice and who want to, like, I'm going to say, want to help the underserved, you know, like little people. And I mean, where I teach at Stanford, like, teaching is not on their menu. Like, I even remember, and I was married. My wife, I was married for a long time. She was a second grade teacher in the Palo Alto school system. But I remember, and I can't remember exactly where it was, but I think it was working I worked in a public school in Woodside, California, which is where lots of CEOs for, you know, really important tech companies live. And I remember, like, some of the students telling me that, I think it was there, that you had to have something wrong with you if you went into public school teaching. That the world they grew up in was so dominated by money and status that they couldn't imagine, like, doing this kind of work. Or, you know, public school teachers, but just teachers. And then the same thing when I talk to Stanford students, that they have been so, like, their brains, I'm going to say, have been warped by their desperate need for personal achievement, and a culture that so overvalues things that promote, like, greed and selfishness, that they, like, the idea of being a teacher or a nurse or any kind of helper doesn't even, like, it just goes like this around their brain. It's not even on the menu. And I see that in most of the corporate sites that I work at. Now, I mean, for good or for bad, I work in the corporate sites that take Stanford graduates as their employees, you know, so the whatever it is, the upper level of, like, that culture. And they're so, like, I'm going to say, addicted to a certain kind of material abundance and a certain need to, like, take vacations in France as if, like, that makes them better people, or having, you know, really fancy cars, or and I'm struck. I mean, I was in my young days a hippie. You know what I mean? It's like I had hair down to here, and I owned a vegetarian restaurant in a beach town in California, you know, when I dropped out of graduate school the first time. So I don't get that. But I see how it's part of this tremendous bifurcation in the United States now between richer and poorer. You know, you're either at some there or there, but I'm always struck by the soullessness of it. And so when I get a chance, and I was kidding, but I take that opportunity whenever I can to speak to teachers. It's because I genuinely admire the people who continue in a field that I left. You know, I left that to do other things, and the work that I have done since is on, like, mostly the science of what makes people happy, and the research and the teaching on, like, how do you create, like, really people who are content in their lives. And it's one, very hard to do, to become content in your life. And two, it's almost impossible to do when you have a never-ending thirst for more, which is the crisis of, like, the Silicon Valley ethos, or the I need so much, I need more. It's very hard to be happy when you always need more. And it's interesting because the best definition of happiness that I have ever seen is Albert Schweitzer's. And his definition is happiness is wanting what you have, which is a profoundly spiritual statement. And it involves qualities of really noticing what you have, and then appreciating what you have, and then forgiving the limitations of what you have. It's seeing it deeply, which, with unfortunately this thing, almost none of us see anything anymore. No, I mean that we have traded much of our visual connection and intelligence for this. And it has made my work close to impossible. That I can't even get people to look at other people, let alone, like, listen. Because in many audiences that I'm speaking at, a third of the people are still texting while the talk is going on. And they don't even realize how, like, desperately corrupted their nervous systems have become, and how intimacy and purpose are the first things to go when your nervous system gets corrupted. So the Albert Schweitzer definition is almost antithetical to a capitalist worldview. A capitalist worldview is, I always need to sell you something new. And I always need to create need and demand for things that you had no idea you needed. No, seriously, that's the essence of the capitalist worldview. I remember, I've written 3 books, and all of them were published by Harper. And the editor that I had on all 3 books, but the first book was his first book too, so we became friends. And I remember asking him at the time that I was writing my first forgiveness book, because nobody had really written anything about forgiveness that was, like, used. And I said, well, you know, for you guys, what's a successful book? And he mentioned to me that one of the prideful things of their publishing empire was the first book on perimenopause, because they had basically invented a problem. I'm dead serious. It's like somebody had decided that the 8 years before menopause now needed to be a problem. And so now there's billions of dollars being peddled on things that most of you need to deal with perimenopause, when not that long ago, menopause wasn't even a problem. But the genius of marketing and capitalism was it could turn the years before menopause into a problem. And they were totally proud of themselves. Like, okay, we've ruined your 50s, now let's work on your 40s. But that's what you're competing against when you're a humble teacher. It is a world that is pushing and pushing and pushing for new and more, and is almost teaching all of us that what we have is not enough. And by corollary, who you are is not enough. I remember, and this was a very entertaining moment for me. My in-laws my father-in-law was really successful, and I can speak about it, I could speak about it anywhere I want, but for you, I can tell you that he was the person who started the Scholastic book fairs. When he became the president of Scholastic Books back in the 80s. And there was a company in Florida before then that had book fairs and were very small, but they were around the country, but they were no big deal. He convinced Scholastic to buy that company, partner with it, and then take their distribution network and create book fairs literally in every public school in the United States. So, he was a very successful, very visionary person. And because he was successful and visionary, I got to go with them and meet people that, in my really humble upbringing, nobody. I was a lower middle class, my mother was a public school teacher. And one day, we're at this fancy country club that they belong to in Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts, where Bill Clinton would take his vacations. And so one of their friends, this is just so funny about this world, one of their friends, and this going back 25, 30 years for this thing, one of their friends was Michael Dukakis's dentist. Michael Dukakis was the 1988 Democratic candidate for president. And this guy would never talk to me. We played golf together, and he wouldn't talk to me because I was owning a vegetarian restaurant. So I wasn't worthy of his attention because he was Michael Dukakis's dentist. 5 years later, I get into Stanford, and he's all chatty with me. I couldn't make this stuff up. So you're fighting all that. You are. You have to recognize the forces upon which, I'm going to say, you've grounded yourself most likely. And because I watched it. My mother was a teacher, and my wife was a teacher, and I worked with teachers for a long time. There's a good-heartedness that allows one to do what you do. And the interesting thing is, if there wasn't so much cultural pressure, and this is the other thing, the psychology of teachers is not great often for self-esteem. Like, they have done research on who becomes, in particular, an elementary school teacher, and it's people who struggle with self-assertion. It's people who struggle to break rules when is necessary. And it's people who tend to conform. Like this is the research on public school teachers. It's also people who have empathy and kindness and, goodwill. But those are the limitations of, like, this is public school. Who's going to work in a public school if you're not interested in conformity? Like, you'd find something else to do. But what is so interesting and important to me is that quality of heartfulness. When that quality is allowed to flourish, and cognitively one can own its goodness, and when one can self-talk into the value of being other-centered, which is also in public school teachers. They have assessments, which is like how much is your interest on self and how much is it on other. And you have groups of like occupations which are on self, and you have groups of occupations on other, and teachers are on other. But the core of happiness is in giving yourself away, but not depleting yourself. But I see, working as I do in corporate America, their lack of giving of self makes happiness impossible, no matter how much wealth and power they accumulate. And I see it all over the place. When you're there to feed you, you feed you, but it's like a cup that overflows. It just spills out. There's nothing to preserve it. But when you have the kind of, I'm going to say, evolutionary development to want to help and to want to make your work meaningful, then you have one of the basic pillars that can be turned into happiness or into a more equanimity. If you can work on the negative self-talk that most of you, I would imagine, have of not being good enough or never knowing when to stop or always feeling you have to take care. It's when you can give but not deplete that you create some of the inner characteristics of happier people. Because the research is very clear. There's only a couple of things that matter for happiness, and they are relationship, purpose, and savoring. That's it. And the most important is relationship. And you all have the opportunity to make meaningful relationship with little and bigger people. And it's what's so crucial is to remember, again, that status and power and money do not contribute to happiness anywhere near relationship. And it's not even close. All of the research estimates are that between 50 to 70% of our happiness is people. And that's enormous, and nothing is in second place. I mean, there are things in second place, but they're so far apart. That the capacity to connect and care about others is the cornerstone of a happy life. It's not just in like teachers. It's the most famous study about that is the long-standing Harvard study, where they took 2 years of Harvard students back in the 30s and measured them up the wazoo in what they could measure back then. And the Harvard people, being Harvard people, liked being assessed so much, they probably thought they were so special that that their data, wow, look, they're starting with the best, everybody. And they picked Harvard people because at that point they assumed that they were America's best and brightest. So why not go after the best? So they assessed that generation. They liked it so much their kids joined. Then their kids joined. They had 40 years of data and then 80 years of data. And each time that, these are Harvard graduates and they're men. So each time they analyzed the data, the first time it was, and the psychiatrist responsible for the study was embarrassed when he came out with the details. He kind of shuffled out on stage and said, we have Supreme Court justices and senators and the most important thing in their lives is relationship. I don't understand it. And now 40 years later, they did the data again, and now the new psychiatrist got even more specific. The most important thing in these people's lives and the most critical skill for them to learn and the core of their ability to be happy is their ability to give and receive love. The ability to give and receive love. So you all work in a place fertile for that. And you want to make sure you pay attention. You want to make sure, and I'm going to say this to you as more than any much, you got to make sure you tame this. That there are very few cultural instances now that we have some control over that are harming our capacity to give and receive love more than this. I can't exaggerate that clarity for you. This wrecks your nervous system if you're not careful. It pulls on two neurotransmitter systems very strongly. It pulls on the dopamine system, and you know about this, the little bits of excitement, and human beings as animals crave newness and excitement. And we don't realize that if we go a little deeper, we get excitement from love and generosity and compassion and kindness. But if we're not in touch with those qualities, we need the stimulation of dopamine for excitement. But that's why love makes you happy and cell phones don't. Because love has its own stimulation and its own excitement and its own psychophysiologic mechanisms. But this is the cheap excitement, and it's robbing everybody of their capacity to go deeper. It's robbing your kids, it's robbing yourselves, it's robbing your communities, because once you get hooked on the dopamine need to see what's next here, those actually replace some of the receptors that are in your brain for the real dopamine experience. That dopamine is a neurotransmitter put into your body so that you could do really, how do I put this, strange and intense things for food and sex. That's the actual purpose of dopamine. Because back in the day, you might have had to, wander around 100 miles for food and sex. So dopamine gave you a little jolt of pleasure saying, go get them. That's what dopamine is for. Just around the bend and then 80 miles, you'll find food or sex. But that's what those receptors are for. Therefore, that chemical is designed to get you to go towards good things and pleasure. But it's been hijacked by the tiny pleasures of, whatever it is, whatever you get on this, that has robbed some of those receptors of the deeper reach for this. And then there's the adrenaline receptors and the serotonin receptors that this has also hijacked, which is this causes so much stress for everybody. You get more bad news on this than almost any other way in your life right now. You get emails, you get texts, you get messages. So in some way, your brain is scared to death of your phone. I'm anthropomorphizing everything, but I'm not exaggerating. That your brain is frightened of the information that your phone is going to give it. So it is on regular anxiety alert. The only way you manage that anxiety is by either turning this off, putting it on, airplane, or actually moving it more than 3 feet from your body. If you have it in your pocket, or if you're sitting here with your phone on the table right in front of you, you are not free to think what you want. You're bound by the tension that that phone creates in your nervous system without you even knowing it. Because your nervous system is primarily a threat-seeking mechanism designed to keep you safe. And so if your entire life is like this right here, your capacity to have certain positive experiences has been attenuated by the phone. So this is a challenge for everybody. One of my favorite studies had intimate partners in an experiment, but one of the partners was a party to the experiment. So they were asked to, in the conversation with their intimate partner, and they were in an experimental situation, to take out their phone and put it face down right between the partners, the couple. And then they checked them, their body and their mind and stuff like that. And they found that even a phone face down, both partners reported a 25% decrease in relationship satisfaction the moment the phone came out. Both partners. Because even though our primary task is to give and receive love, we are very anxious creatures. And your default emotional state is anxiety. And that is because, even though you dress yourself up and you go out to a job and you make believe you're fully competent, at your core, you know how vulnerable you are and how little you know. You all know it. And you then have a nervous system that takes that and turns that into its life work of protecting you. So one of the ways that we become safer in this kind of anxiety-fueled experience of life is by connecting with other people. That's the basic human protection against our anxiety, not this. And when you are become addicted to this, you reduce your capacity to connect, but even more strongly, you reduce other people's capacity to connect with you. And so we create communities of people who not only can't get along as easily, but are more dispirited because we don't even get each other's attention. And the first screen for all of this, of our brain and nervous system, am I being noticed? Are the people that I depend on available to me? Can I reduce my anxiety even for a moment, knowing that somebody's really there and seeing me? These are crucial questions for your nervous system. So what I try to remind people is, well, a couple things. I saw John started this with a meditation. I'm going to tell you, to the best of my understanding from the science, you would be well advised to have a daily and regular meditation practice if you want to create healthy relationships, including a healthy relationship with yourself. I'm going to say that flat out, that the science supports that. I'm going to tell you that about an 8 to 10 minute meditation practice will quiet down parts of your brain that see other people as dangerous. That your normal default mechanism is to only look for differences among people to protect yourself, which is why human beings under threat are so tribal. And you see it ripping our country apart now. Both sides are nuts with their threat, just nuts. And collectively, we can either join with each other in kind of affection or join with each other against our enemy. And you see us joining with each other against our enemies. But a meditation allows us, because its purpose is to help us connect with deeper parts of ourselves. And it works on the brain by focusing attention first. Then, when your attention is better, it allows you to reduce some of your threat seeking, and particularly with people, because you're a little more centered. So I would highly suggest that meditation become a daily practice for every day for you. And I think the minimum dose is probably 8 to 10 minutes at a time. And I would highly suggest that whenever any of you have meetings, that you have some meditation practice as part of any meeting, because it is working on your nervous system in a way that nothing else does. There is somebody who did the first review of meditation studies in the scientific world. His hypothesis was that meditation, when we fully understand it, and we're starting to more because of brain scans, will be the next level of consciousness that will be seen as necessary for human beings. Now there's just waking, sleeping, and dreaming that they have fully identified as distinct stages of consciousness. But his hypothesis, which is being borne out, is that there'll be a meditative calm, which will also be seen as a distinct and necessary consciousness. From my work, meditation and some form of quieting is the gateway to the pro-social qualities that I try to teach people to help improve their relationships, such as forgiveness and gratitude and kindness. That if you actually do make up your mind that you want to have better relationships, you're in a culture that has warped that to the degree where all the books are about assertiveness and how you get what you want from other people, and all these kind of aggressive, self-absorbed me that trying to manipulate the world to get what it needs. I'm going to tell you that a much stronger way to improve relationships is to make yourself better at relationship. Not to try to change other people quite as much, and not to try to manipulate them into giving you what you want. You can do that too, but you want to make yourself a better person in relationship. And it takes some practice. So let me start. I'm going to do a few practices before my time is up. Let me start with a very simple meditation. If you'd all please close your eyes, and if you haven't already, do something with your phones where they're not available to you. Because you can't even meditate if you're worried about what's coming in on your phone. Having tried many times myself, it doesn't work. And what I'd like you to do is please sit up modestly straight. And allow your eyes to close. And the first thing you want to do is cognitively remind yourself just how lucky you are. If you want to relax your body, it starts with the mind. Remind yourself just how unbelievably lucky you are. You woke up this morning and had food and clothing and shelter and water and a job, and very likely people who loved you. You need to pay attention if you want to see life clearly. But if you want to relax, you have to see the abundance so you don't need the anxiety. So you want to remind yourself you're okay. You're not perfect, but you're okay. And what you want to do is allow the truth, literally the truth of your, in this world, staggering abundance to help you settle into your belly and your middle with some calmness. Because the lack of calmness is because you're afraid. And we're all afraid. So it's not unusual, it's not unique. Everybody's afraid. But you want to practice like literally relaxing your shoulders. So most people hold their shoulders tight and pull them up. And you want to drop your shoulders. You want to relax. You can even shake out your arms if you need to. Because it's very hard to meditate if your shoulders are tight, because you're doing that to keep yourself from feeling. And you need to feel. So you got to relax your shoulders. And you got to relax your belly. And you want to bring your attention into your belly. And what your brain needs to see is that when you inhale, your belly expands. Your shoulders are relaxed. But when you inhale, your belly expands. And when you exhale, your belly contracts. This is the only signal your brain registers for whether you're safe, is the rate and depth of your breathing in your lower abdomen. Nothing else you can do will fully turn off the stress response like this. It's a survival mechanism. And then you just want to maybe take 2 or 3 slow breaths where your belly expands when you inhale, contracts when you exhale. And that you try, and this takes a lot of effort, to not breathe into your chest, but breathe into your belly. Many of you have spent your whole life sucking in your belly, trying to convince other people you don't have one. And that has limited to some degree the oxygenation of your brain, and has limited to some degree your freedom of emotional expression. And then what I want you to do before we're finished is bring an image to your mind's eye of someone you absolutely adore. You want to bring an image to your mind's eye of someone you absolutely adore. And then you want to try to see if you can feel in your heart the affection you have for this person. You want to see someone you love, and then you want to feel that affection. And you legitimately just want to try to, gently sit with your own warm heart, just for a moment. And then just let that go. And take a breath or two and gently allow your eyes to open. So in order to cultivate the spaces in us which are capable of deep compassion and forgiveness and generosity and real gratitude, you can't be in threat mode to have those experiences. Adrenaline in your body will make sure that forgiveness, gratitude, generosity, and compassion are unavailable to you. That is the tremendous danger of this thing. So we have to cultivate experiences that open literally our nervous system up to the more evolved, kinder aspects of our nature. Because on default, they're unavailable to us. So you've all seen teachers who are lovely human beings, but they get themselves so wound up in the morning, every morning, that they're rushing around all day. And so they don't have a chance, because of the rushing, to connect in a heart way with the people that they want to connect with. That's all fear. Whenever you tell yourself, I have to rush all the time, it's because you're scared. Whenever you tell yourself, I have too much to do, it's because you're scared. Whenever you tell yourself, I need to check my phone 400 times, it's because you're scared. Whenever you tell yourself, I have to multitask, it's because you're scared. And anytime you tell yourself, I'm scared, your brain will make sure that you're not distracted by love. And you're not like gonna make a mistake through compassion or forgiveness to not see a threat that's there. So we have to recognize first the amount of abundance we already have so we can put some ballast into our threat seeking. You know, there are about 850 million people last night who went to bed without food on this world. The Gates Foundation has done remarkable work. Before they started, it was over 1 billion. So it's about 850 million. And there's another billion or so that don't have good water supply. So one of the ways that we balance our fear is by trying to see our life clearly. Yes, you are making economic sacrifices relative to the rest of our country. But most of you have homes and food supply and water and a car. Our nervous systems are derived from 150 years ago. Only 15% of this earth had food security. That is, only 15% of people knew where the next meal was coming from 150 years ago on this earth. So we are desperately anxious creatures. And we haven't caught up with our life at all. And what you want to do is catch up with your life so you can be less fearful and more giving. And I don't mean giving to the point of exhaustion, but a little less fear. So let me give you one more simple practice along this kind of line, because for most of the people that I work with, it's just reminding them, balance your ship. And when your ship is balanced, you become kinder automatically because you're not quite as threat-centered. And you become more forgiving, which is my work, but you also become more compassionate of yourself. So what I'd like you to do is think of right now one area of your life that is going well. And I want you to think of one area of your life that's going well. And then I want you to turn to somebody next to you and talk about it. The one area, not the one, but a area that's going well. But here's the catch. Now, here's the catch if you want to learn some of this stuff. During the 2 minutes that you're talking, don't complain about your life at all. Which will be, for most of you, like root canal. You will be sitting there with your mouth open, wanting that guy to just stop, because we are wired to complain. Research shows that between 75 and 80% of our daily conversation is complaint. So in order to see things clearly and reduce your threat level so you can offer the kindness that you want to, you have to work a little bit. So turn to somebody next to you, and I'll give you 2 minutes to have a conversation of one part of your life that works well and no complaining. Okay, everybody, if I could have your attention. Hello. I could stand up here all day, but they're going to drag me off in about 5 minutes. So let me give you a practice that, another helpful, simple practice is when you turn your attention back, come inside for a second. Just bring your attention back and center. If you did that rather than grab this, you would have such a better day. Because what our nervous system needs is to, like, in computer talk, clean up the files. And grabbing this all the time leaves so many things open and undone for our brain. And the brain is monitoring those, so it can't pay as much attention to the people who need your attention. So what I have found is that if you ask people to spend a little more time, just a little more quieting down, centering a little bit, speaking more positively, and remembering love, then they create the psychophysiologic experience that then allows them to offer forgiveness, to offer compassion if they want to be generous, because they're in the state from which those emerge. Like, you can't be running around and telling yourself all day long what the hell's wrong with them, why'd they do this, and possibly touch the part of you that can let it go. But when you still yourselves for a minute and focus on goodness, then you open up the part of your brain that doesn't need you to be nasty, that doesn't need you to want other people to suffer at all. But it's all an inner game, and it's all done in the present. It's like right now. So, like, if you're having an argument with somebody, there's nothing wrong with an argument. But they've shown in couples work that healthy couples, which is not that high a number, unfortunately, it's, the research shows that at any one time, only about a third of couples report being happy with each other. That's low. Well, considering that 50% of them at some point will get divorced, it's not that low. But healthy couples, they do something even when they're fighting called repair. Healthy couples. They have mechanisms where it doesn't escalate out of control. So in a healthy couple, they might put their hand on the partner's knee, or they may make a joke that they both share, or they may make fun of themselves, or they may just say, hey, look, we're doing it again. The healthy couples can touch the love that they have for each other, even in a disagreement, because they practiced. But when you're arguing with a coworker or, upset about somebody who, like, did something wrong and you don't have, like, a full-time relationship with them, it's hard to find that love with which to let it go. So what I've noticed is that you have to practice. You have to practice finding the place in you that is loving, and give yourself a little more attention to stay there when you can. So during the day, that means you have to be, or you want to be, quieting down every now and then, even if it's just that centering practice for a minute, or you want to do a 5-minute meditation during lunchtime. And you want to remember, literally, all the things that you have to be thankful for. You know, they have again found, and I'm going to say this and then I'm going to finish by reading a poem. They have found that the more time people spend on Facebook and social media, the less happy they are. It's a direct relationship. And one of the reasons they found that is social media, including LinkedIn, are full of fake gratitude, like bullshit gratitude. These sites are like narcissistic displays of how wonderful I am, with fake expressions of gratitude, because the center of the thing is me. Look at me, I'm standing at the Eiffel Tower, I'm so grateful. That's not gratitude. Literally, that has nothing to do with gratitude, nothing. The power of gratitude is its creation of humility. I'm grateful because of you. I'm grateful because I have the opportunity to breathe in an abundant world, whatever. That's gratitude. Gratitude immediately lowers your blood pressure and opens your brain. Real gratitude. It's a wonderful practice. So I'm going to read, and you want to stay off of these sites, literally, that foster the opposite, which is, look at me, I'm wonderful, give me applause. Nothing whatsoever to do with gratitude. So my favorite work on my favorite writing on forgiveness is a short poem by Mary Oliver called The Settlement. Look, it's spring, and last year's loose dust has turned into this soft willingness. The wind flowers have come up trembling. Slowly the brackens are uplifting their curvaceous and pale bodies. The thrushes have come home, none less than filled with mystery, sorrow, happiness, music, ambition. And I am walking out into all of this with nowhere to go and no task undertaken, but to turn the pages of this beautiful world over and over in the world of my mind. Therefore, dark past, I'm about to do it. I'm about to forgive you for everything. Thank you.